So welcome everyone. It's good to see everybody here and online. And we're coming in the Torah as we're going through all the Parshas. And we have a really dramatic story to study today, which is the episode of the golden calf. It's the middle of the Parsha, middle of the portion. And I think one of the stories that probably one remembers the best, right, from one's childhood. You hear about the golden calf, or you watch that part in the Ten Commandments. Yeah. It's hard to forget the image of this golden calf and the people worshiping, and it's pretty intuitive to understand the failure, right? You shall have no other God but me, and God is talking to them, and then suddenly they're, at least the way it's portrayed in the movie, they're dancing wildly and having a big kind of idolatrous party around the golden calf, and Moses isn't too happy, and it's a whole thing. But it's interesting. We'll see as we get into the commentaries too, that they see that there's a lot of apologies going on, both for Moses and for Aaron and for the Jewish people, and they're an effort to try and understand how this could have happened. And so for us, we're looking at what is the message of all of it? What does it still teach us? And what can we take from it in our days? So we're going to turn to it, to the story. It is Exodus. We've got our Tanakh here with us. It is going to be chapter 32 of Exodus. Chapter 32 of Exodus, and we'll first begin just looking at the story, which is really fairly short, and then we'll go start to bring in the commentaries. So Alan, if you wouldn't mind beginning, and maybe begin the last verse from the previous chapter 31:18, and then we'll continue.
Okay. And does everybody have a Tanakh, or
everybody have
something to follow along?
Yeah,
we've got another
different
version.
one.
Yeah,
We used a different one.
Okay.
Yes, I have some.
All right.
Okay, great.
When he finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the pact, stone tablets inscribed with the finger of God. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him." Aaron said to him, "Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." And all the people took off the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. This he took from them and cast in a mold and made it into a molten calf. And they exclaimed, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron announced, "Tomorrow shall be a festival of the Lord." Early next day, the people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. They sat down to eat and drink, and then rose to dance.
So we'll stop before we continue, and I want someone else with a different translation maybe would be willing to read verses 3 to 6.
okay, I can do that. And all the people stripped themselves of the golden earrings that were on their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took them from their hands, fashioned it with an engraving tool, and made it into a molten calf, upon which they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who have brought you up from the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of it, and Aaron proclaimed and said, "Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord." On the next day, they arose early, offered up burnt offerings, and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and to drink, and they got up to make merry.
Okay. So
I
make
think-
merry, that in ours it says dance, make merry. That's what exactly does it mean to dance and make merry is a big issue. But Alan, thank you, Bonnie. Alan, if you wouldn't mind continuing to read just a little bit
Sure.
more, just we have the,
Just wanted to say, I keep looking at in verse, well, I guess it's verse 1, where the people say, come, make us a God who shall go before us, for that man Moses. Like, who's this guy Moses? He's like nobody important,
what do you make of it?
I'm sure I'm maybe reading into it a little more than was there, but it's almost like they're being dismissive of Moses after all that he did for them.
Well, they're,
Much as they are dismissive of what God said, and they're going off and making the golden calf.
well, the quote just said Moses, right?
Yeah.
You're about to say
Yeah.
something. Someone was about to say something.
I said that they're being impatient, waiting, so they need something to entertain themselves.
So, right, but it's also kind of like your daughter is causing some trouble here, saying to your spouse. Or John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it also may be a way of indicating he's really, it's a separation. He's really no longer one of us. That man, Moses.
Beautiful, thank you. You're right, and that man is kind of like pointing at something, right? And there's in the tradition, right? This is when they were crossing the sea. He said, "This is our God," right? This is our God. So you're pointing at it, and it's kind of it's a strong act. So that man Moses, who brought us up from the land of Egypt, somehow the tone of it is a little. So what you're picking, the tone of it, they've lost. It's not our beloved leader Moses.
Yeah. Okay, shall I continue?
Yeah, and then we can go back afterwards. Yeah.
Okay. The Lord spoke to Moses, hurry down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have acted basely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I enjoined upon them. They have made themselves a molten calf and bowed low to it and sacrificed to it, saying, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. The Lord further said to Moses, I see that this is a stiff-necked people. Now, let me be, that my anger may blaze forth against them, and that I may destroy them, and make of you a great nation. But Moses implored the Lord his God, saying, let not your anger, O Lord, blaze forth against your people, whom you delivered from the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand. Let not the Egyptians say, it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains and annihilate them from the face of the earth. Turn from your blazing anger and renounce the plan to punish your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, how you swore to them by yourself and said to them, I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give to your offspring this whole land of which I spoke, to possess forever. And the Lord renounced the punishment he had planned to bring upon his people. Thereupon Moses turned and went down from the mountain, bearing the 2 tablets of the pact, tablets inscribed on both their surfaces. They were inscribed on the one side and the other. The tablets were God's work, and the writing was God's writing, incised upon the tablets. When Joshua heard the sound of the people and its boisterousness, he said to Moses, there is a cry of war in the camp. But he answered, it is not the sound of the tune of triumph or the sound of the tune of defeat. Is the sound of song that I hear. As soon as Moses came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, he became enraged. And he hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf that they had made and burned it. He ground it to powder and strewed it upon the water, and so made the Israelites drink it. Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought such sin upon them?" Aaron said, "Let not my Lord be enraged. You know that this people is bent on evil. They said to me, 'Make us a god to lead us.' For that man Moses, who brought us from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has happened to him. So I said to them, 'Whoever has gold, take it off.' They gave it to me, and I hurled it into the fire, and out came this calf." Oh, blame it on the fire. Moses saw that the people were out of control, since Aaron had let them get out of control, so that they were a menace to any who might oppose them. Moses stood up in the gate of the camp and said, "Whoever is for the Lord, come here." And all the Levites rallied to him. He said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, each of you put sword on thigh, go back and forth from gate to gate throughout the camp, and slay brother, neighbor, and kin." Ooh. The Levites did as Moses had bidden, and some 3,000 of the people fell that day. And Moses said, "Dedicate yourselves to the Lord this day, for each of you has been against son and brother, that he may bestow a blessing upon you today." The next day Moses said to the people, "You have been guilty of a great sin, yet I will now go up to the Lord. Perhaps I may win forgiveness for your sin." Moses went.
Let's stop there, because then we get into a whole long part about Moses asking the people for forgiveness, and ultimately comes down with a second set of tablets. And God reveals himself to herself to Moses as the 11 attributes of compassion, 13 attributes of compassion. Any initial thoughts or comments from reading all of this passage? Any impressions?
I would like to just draw attention to the difference in the translation
Yes.
of verse and the more literal one, and the one in the JPS, the new JPS, the Chumash, of verse 4, I guess it is, literally, but there's a note that explains it in part. These are your gods, O Israel,
Yes.
taking it as a plural, and in fact, using the plural pronoun too. These are your gods. And so I think it should be at least noted, and Rashi, of course, talks about that too, but I'm having difficulty downloading your sheet right now. So, but I know that I know it does refer to that. So I think it's important to at least be aware of that. That's really
Our translation is the same with the plural.
It's very clear that it's presented as a plural.
It is. It's a strong translation decision that they decided to change that.
Exactly.
Gods to your God. I guess they felt it would make more sense to an English reader, because there's only one golden calf, so what are they talking about? But it is.
But there's a.
Anyone else? Any other just overall impressions just from reading it this one time? Go ahead.
I just had two.
Yeah.
One little thing, I guess,
Yeah.
where it says that there were two tablets, but they were carved on both sides.
Mhm.
And every depiction I've ever seen has all the, 5 on one tablet and 5 on the other, all on one side. So I don't know if the second set of tablets was that way, but, I just thought, oh, that, kind of is different than what we're used to. But I was also just struck with the fact that they sent the guards or the soldiers and they slaughtered 3,000 people.
Yes.
And, that's one heck of a lesson for the people of Israel.
Why did they do it?
I'm not sure why they did it. I guess it seems like it was vengeance. But why those three? I mean, why those people? Were they just, it's almost like it was what the Amalekites did when they came and they slaughtered the stragglers.
Uh-huh.
And here you're picking 3,000 people on the very edges of the 600,000 or 2.5 million, depending on how we want to count it. It's like, let's pick off this group. Maybe it's all one people from a particular tribe. I don't know.
Well, they were talking about the Levites, and weren't they related to the Levites? Last scroll.
Well, the Levites were.
Moses are Levites.
They were doing the
The
slaughtering,
Levites were the killers. The Levites were
right?
It goes back to the idea, right? When the Levites have a lot of martial energy in them, let's say, they're the ones when back to the original Levi, right? When their sister is raped in Canaan, then they're the ones who go out and say, you have to be circumcised if you want to marry my daughter, and they'll circumcise themselves, and it's Levi who goes out and slaughters everybody, or Shimon. So, there's that the Levi here are living up to their reputation, but Moses asked them, and Moses is from that tribe, right? Anybody want to try and understand why this had to happen, the 3,000?
If I want to add something, Rabbi, and this is something that just caught my eye as I was studying, and this is something that caught my eye before too. If we look at verse, I believe it's 32:7, just the statement where he says, "Hurry down for your people," right?
Yeah.
Your people.
Your daughter.
Where did this connection come, right? Where is, first it was my people, right? The Hebrews, the Israelites. Now it's your people, right? So I'm thinking, and this is just me contemplating and brainstorming. I'm wondering if the people that God is referring to is the Egyptians that came with the Hebrews, because the Hebrews did not leave Egypt by themselves. There were Egyptians that accompanied them that left Egypt. And we have to remember that these Egyptians were idolaters. They worshipped other gods, right? So the cow, this golden cow could have been something that they created. So these 3,000 people that died could have been Egyptians and not really Hebrews.
Or the mixed multitudes, right? We have the mixed multitudes are left with the Israelites as they left. Egyptians, there might have been other things too. There might have been other peoples that were stuck in Egypt and took the opportunity to leave when everybody else was leaving. Dan, did you want to add something?
Well, of course, it's not based on it, it's just a thought, but
Sure.
I'm wondering if, first of all, people are kind of fickle, right? So I'm talking in general. And so if somebody comes, they are easy to follow ideas after a while. Moses has disappeared for a long period of time. He's not around.
Yeah.
And so there can be whispers from certain people who, want a God. And perhaps the people who were killed may have been the instigators of this and got the people to follow them.
They were the whisperers. No, that's beautiful. I mean, it could. I mean, there's something very strange about all of this, right? There's something very, not just strange, but also like hypnotic, right? You know, and something is only like other. First of all, how did this the way Aaron described this golden calf appearing is
Right.
Is poof, here it came out. I mean, it sounds like a bad excuse, but it's also there's like some forces at play here as well, and the way. No, I don't want to spend much time talking about excusing the 3,000 or not excusing or whatever, but if there was this hypnotic power to idolatry, which is the way people often, right, they describe it, like you would, you know, all the ancient cults, you know, it wasn't like going, you know, the way we would imagine even you know, a Hindu person in our modern times who's got his little deity. I mean, idolatry was something with a hypnotic power to it that drew you in, and you know, they would have cultic ceremonies where they would kill people and have orgies. I mean, there was a whole like energy to it that was really intense and crazy. And so, you know, maybe there were some people who were so drawn into it that they were completely out of control and doing horrible, immoral things. You know, were they sacrificing children? It doesn't say so, but could that stuff have been happening? Maybe, we don't know. You know, these ancient cults I mean, you know, it's hard to, the only thing I can try and think about is when I talk about this all the time, but when I was traveling in India, you know, there are parts of India where their worship is very lofty. You know, there's non-duality, there's no God, but then I remember once entering into a 1,000-year-old temple, you know, ancient stone and kind of like old broken deities everywhere, and kind of like a beam of light kind of shining through a dark space, and walking into an inner sanctum where there's like a rock being worshipped with this kind of like, and it felt like this has been worshipped in this way with leaves and everything for thousands of years. And so when you think of that kind of dynamic, you know, and those kinds of things where it could lead people, maybe there's places where people allow themselves to be drawn into that, and there's not much coming out of it. You know, you're kind of just stuck in it, or maybe it could go to some place so bad you have to stop it and, you know, nip it in the bud. Not to excuse it, but that's the only way I can begin to even come to understand what you know, it's like Moses has been working so hard to get the people in the right direction, right? So hard. Everything he's been doing, and he leaves and he comes down and they've gone to the worst possible place. You know, it's like you leave your kids with the babysitter and you come back and, you know, they've burnt down the house and eaten all the sweets, and and your pet is you know where the pet is, you know, it's just like the worst possible. And he's like, really? You know, I was up there trying to, but I don't know. That's my own personal attempt to try and understand.
I'm struggling, Rabbi, with Aaron's role in all of this, right? Because in the context of what we've been reading the last couple of weeks, right, there's a lot of detail in the text to sanctifying the priestly class, right? And last week we discussed all the vestments, and I think the week before we talked about the Ark of the Covenant. And so there have been these very deliberate, the last couple of Parshas have been about sanctifying the priestly class. And Aaron, who is the head of the family, right, because he's the oldest son, I'm appalled at just how quickly he abandons his brother. Just and then gives all these excuses. And so I'm trying very hard to put all of this that's happening with the people leading Aaron to sin, right? Like Aaron has no control over the people or anybody in his clan. Really, I'm really struggling with his role in all of this. I mean, he's been sanctified. He should know better. He really should know better. But what's the first thing he does is he abandons his brother, and he says to the people who are saying, oh, you know, that man is stuck on the mountain. We don't know if he's coming back. let's make ourselves a god. And Aaron says, okay, as if everything that had gone before in the last couple of parshas didn't happen. I mean, that for me is the difficulty with this story. Why does Aaron not uphold the standard to which he's been raised, the position to which he has been consecrated? Why does he abandon that so quickly?
Does anybody want to mount the defense of Aaron?
I will.
Okay,
I like being devil's advocate.
okay, go ahead.
So if you're looking at the situation as, you know, the people
Yes.
decided, and
Yeah.
there's, you know, at some point, if there's a strong force, and we see this in countries today, if there's a strong force of a loud voice from a certain sector, it could actually be physically dangerous, like life or death, to oppose certain people if they become fanatical or
yeah,
so caught
sure.
up in an idea.
Yeah.
And so that's my devil's advocate position.
See,
That's a mirror.
He's worried, he feels like he's got to do something. John, go ahead.
The other thing about Aaron here is he gets off scot-free.
Yeah, he really does.
There's no punishment for him. And one of the modern commentators that I've read says that the rather unexpected place here where the Levites all of a sudden became the agents of God's righteousness, that's a more recent interpolation to sort of puff the priestly class up a little. That you could exercise that from the text and it would read more smoothly if it weren't there. It does seem to be a little bit of a break in the narrative.
Do you know that there's another piece to this, and that is the movement from physical depiction of the divinity to depiction of the divinity through language. And so what's happening here, at least the way I see it, is that the people are being introduced to the possibility that the divinity lives through language rather than through things. Even the earlier stuff with the temple were things that they were making. So maybe even Aaron had to make a major step in his thinking to be able to change from a divinity which has had a physical presence, like even a tabernacle, to a divinity that had no physical presence at all, but to something written. So so Aaron's standing there, and maybe he gets drawn in to creating a physical presence for the people because that's what he expects too. So that's the only thing I can think of about that.
Very nice. See, I mean, it may be hard for us to understand how big that shift is a demand on the people, right? In Egypt, everybody has little gods, you know, they know about the God of their ancestors, but how much do they really know? And all other peoples have gods, and that's just what they know. And the one man who's been telling them that you should have something else is gone. So not just his words, but his influence is gone. And maybe you're right. Aaron too. He's not, you know, he's been a bit of an accessory to Moses. It's not like he's talked to God. He's been involved, but he maybe he hasn't fully integrated the shift himself, or he doesn't quite know what to do. And it's a big ask. It's a big ask for people to shift. I mean, if we asked in our times, people, okay, the Torah is too much of an intermediary. No more Torah, no Torah scrolls in the sanctuary, no prayer books. We're not using language anymore. We're only using meditation, the power of thought. You have to sit for 2 hours and just think. No singing, no speaking, no language, just thought. You know, after a while, people might be like, okay, I'm tired of just sitting here and thinking. Give me some singing, give me some talking, give me a little Torah. give me something to look at and study. I want to parade that Torah around a little bit. So I mean, there is. We get this later, but there is that tradition that the making of the tabernacle actually came after the golden calf, because God realized that people needed something more concrete, and therefore gave them a tabernacle and all the vestments. But that truly, it's out of order. Now that's the real order. Because the initial idea was they didn't need a tabernacle because they were just living in that aura of the 10 Commandments of just being a one with God. But we're physical creatures. We need something physical, and Aaron understood some of that and was willing to give them a little bit of that. But maybe he didn't understand how bad it would get. You could say perhaps in his defense, but maybe he did. Maybe he was just taken up, or maybe he should have. Maybe he should have accepted to die instead of make them the calf. He said, over my dead body.
Mm-hmm. And what is the sin that is being committed here? We know it's idolatry, but is it saying that our God is not Yahweh, it is this golden calf, or is it saying that Yahweh is the golden calf?
It's really right. Well, there is a big, and we'll get to all of this in a minute in our comments.
Okay.
Did he really feel? Is he feel we've built the God of Israel right here? Is that? I mean, it seems in that way. I mean, is he saying this is the God of Israel, or is he saying something else? This is some kind of depiction. Phil, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. To answer that directly, or to try anyhow. Alter makes the point that, well, it says literally, these are your gods of Israel. It's the calf is a singular. I think you pointed that out earlier. But the calf is not the God. That's misleading rhetoric from the prophets. Maybe the calf is the platform on which the God sits or rests, or is understood to be resting, just like the cherubim, very much like that. And in other related cultures, you have a platform on which the God is understood to rest. The calf, it's a calf in this case. It's often a calf or a bull. So we're saying these are your gods. Okay, that's the traditional understanding. The gods are sitting there. It's just that God didn't command, or the Jewish understanding. I mean, God didn't command this particular fashioning of this platform, whereas he did the winged bulls, or whatever the cherubim are. So we didn't get hung up on the relation between the calf and the God. It's a platform. Anyway,
it's an interesting perspective, and a lot of the commentaries, and I didn't include all of them in here in the list. But Rabbeinu Bachya notably goes, and Ramban too, have a very strong defense of the Jewish people. And they say something like that. They didn't know, obviously, about the archaeological, but they say, look, the bull is one of the heads of Ezekiel's chariots type of thing. And it's not quite what you think. And so Rabbeinu Bachya has this whole long thing, which I didn't bring. But he says, well, what's so bad about it? He was just, it wasn't never meant as a God, and it was never meant as this. But then there's still a big problem. If it wasn't so bad, why were God and Moses so angry? And why did God say, I don't want this people anymore? And why did Moses break the tablets? So there is, and then he tries to harmonize it all. And then, there is a place for harmony, but there's something really bad that's happening here. If not, you wouldn't have had that intense reaction by God and Moses, right? That's hard to get away from. Yeah.
It is hard to get away from, and in fact, Aaron realizes that, because he makes that wonderful statement. Mistakes were made. He says, I threw in I asked them for the gold. I threw it in the fire. I flung it into the fire, and out came this calf. It's not on me. And that's the same verb, and this is an altar points this out. He uses that verb, he cast it or he flung it. It's the same one Moses used. It's used to describe how Moses threw down the tablets. He was so enraged. And this is a careful choice of words, I think. And God says, this people of yours, I think Octavia pointed this out, says, this people of yours, your people, it's like you say to your kid, you say to your spouse, your kid is causing a lot of trouble today, or something like that.
Exactly.
And it almost sounds like, I don't know, this could be like a TV drama in a court case, in that, the God and Moses rendered their verdict, and, taking a strict view of the law and wanting to mete out a very harsh punishment. But Aaron's saying, but there were extenuating circumstances. It was me against all the people. All the people wanted this. And if I wouldn't have done it, they would have killed me, and who knows what would have happened. So, I in effect kind of saved them for you. And, and then God said, all right, maybe there were good extenuating circumstances, and I won't punish you to the extent that I wanted to. So it seems like it's almost like you're right, and you're right.
Was it a catastrophe clearly happened, right?
Right.
And the big mistake, but was it, how much of it was intentional and how much of it was a set of bad circumstances that all led to a very bad situation.
What I find interesting is that Moses implores God on behalf of the people before he comes down the mountain.
Right. And then he actually sees it, and he's like, oh, and he throws it. If he'd seen it before, he might not have. This Moses' defense of the people is so similar to the other defense of the people. It's hard not to think it's kind of like a boilerplate text that was kind of brought here, because it's so similar to his other ones. But he straight away goes into that role of defending against defending the people, and he has all his arguments at the tip of his tongue, and suddenly he's a great lawyer. He's doing a good job at. So Nancy said, but Moses had already verbally told the people the
This is the
Decalogue.
second time he's up on the mountain, right? The first time he comes down from the mountain, he tells the people, the very first thing he says is, I'm the Lord thy God who brought you out of Egypt. You will have no other gods before me. That's the first thing he says when he comes down the first time. So.
Well, God says that.
Moses doesn't say that? Doesn't
God
Moses
speaking from the mountain. God speaking from the mountain is.
Well, my point is the people heard it.
The people, right? The people have not seen the tablets yet, but they've heard. It's a complicated because it's hard to know exactly, but it seems like the people have at least heard the 10 Commandments. Moses come down and go back up, or was he up? But part of the vibe the one gets is from the poor people's point of view, right? Moses was gone, and where is God, and what's going on here? From God and Moses' view, they're just downloading more and more of what they want for the people, and Moses is receiving the 10 Commandments and this amazing thing written with God's own hand, and they're preparing the jewel to bring. And then he comes back and it's all gone completely astray, right? That's God and Moses' point of view. And it's really interesting, right? There's this kind of dual imagery. What's happening up on top of the mountain, what's happening below the mountain, right? On top of the mountain, there's this lofty spiritual thing going on, and below the mountain, it's all going bad, right? It's the which feels very human. Yeah.
There's one other thing in chapter 27. I'm looking at the killing that took place. And my translation says, so said the Lord, the God of Israel, let every man place a sword upon his thigh and pass back and forth from one gate to the other in the camp. And let every man kill his brother, every man his friend, every man his kinsman. So these aren't outliers that are getting knocked off here. These are family members. These are your brother, your friend, and your kinsman. What's the purpose of that except for some kind of some sort of a recrudescence of the old ways, which is like a blood orgy? Okay, where there's just going to be some sort of wanton massacre, even of people that are close to you, maybe to make a point, maybe to make an indelible mark in people's minds that they perhaps mustn't do this again.
I mean, the interesting part is, many interesting part, but he doesn't say exactly who to kill, right? He doesn't say, kill all those who are right now bowing down to the golden calf. We don't see any direct indication of what is exactly supposed to be done.
It does say close relatives. Every man is brother, every man is friend.
It says your close relatives, but is that saying, okay, even if you see your brother engage in the idol worship, you have to kill him, or is it saying this randomly go around and?
I think it's sort of a random thing, that what happens is to make it to somehow create a huge chaos that that acts as some sort of a preventative measure.
So let's go to Numbers 25. This is another time where something like that happens a little bit. Numbers 25. And can somebody read for us those verses? Whoever has it first.
While Israel was staying at Shittim, the people profaned themselves by whoring with the Moabite women, who invited the people to the sacrifices for their God. The people partook of them and worshiped that God. Thus Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and the Lord was incensed with Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before the Lord, so that the Lord's wrath may turn away from Israel. So Moses said to Israel's officials, each of you slay those of his men who attach themselves to Baal Peor.
So let's stop. So here it's a little bit more explicit, right? He says, slay all the men who've attached themselves to Baal Peor. And it's almost like those who gave in to that force, that negative force, and who attach themselves to that God. I'm not sure how you would know that by going around the camp, but the way I always imagine it is that what happened here was the same, that they were going around and somehow could see the people who had attached themselves to the golden calf, but maybe it is just a more random execution. Let's get to our commentaries, because I want to show how the tradition is kind of brought some subtlety into the story. So the first is a Rashi, or somebody read for us.
Oh, thank you.
Phil, do you have it, or anybody want to read?
Phil,
I had difficulty downloading, but I have the Rashi of, maybe if you get somebody who has exactly your translation.
Okay, yeah. Somebody have the exact translation that I sent, or?
Rashi, the Rashi commentary? Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
And when the people saw that Moses delayed long, understand, I
Or
can't.
Bashash,
I understand, as the Targum does, as an expression denoting lateness. Similar are Judges 5:28. Why is his chariot so long in coming? And Judges 3:25. And they waited until it was late. For when Moses ascended the mountain, he said to them, to the Israelites, at the end of a period of 40 days, that is on the 40th day, I shall return during the first 6 hours of the day, that is before noon. They thought that the day on which he ascended the mountain, the 7th of Sivan, was to be included in this number. Thus, Sivan having 30 days, he was expected back before noon on the 16th day of Tammuz. In fact, however, he had said to them, after 40 days, meaning 40 complete days, each day together with its night that precedes it, as is customary Jewish reckoning, confer.
And there was evening and there was
Right.
day.
So the day begins at sundown, right? Now, as regards the day of this ascent, its night was not part of it, that it can be reckoned as a complete day, for he ascended on the 7th day of Sivan early in the morning. It follows, therefore, that the 40th day really fell on the 17th of Tammuz and not, as the people had believed, on the 16th. On the 16th of Tammuz, Satan came and threw the world into confusion, giving it the appearance of darkness, gloom, and disorder, that the people should say, surely Moses is dead, and that is why confusion has come to the world. He said to them, yes, Moses is dead, for 6 hours noon has already come, and he has not returned, etc., as it is related in the treatise Shabbat 89a, Confer Rashi and Tosafot. Okay, one cannot, however, say that they erred only on account of it being a cloudy day. Their mistake consisting in not being able to distinguish between forenoon and afternoon.
That is a Michiganer explanation.
They were confused by the time change, right?
Yeah, and you got to throw in Satan too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, right. And Satan throws confusion into everything. Yeah, I thought about you while I was reading that, David, thinking, what would Maimonides say about this? He just would not. He just
no, he
wouldn't.
wouldn't say anything. He didn't say anything.
But this is Meshigas, yeah.
But why does this tradition happen? Because they don't want to believe that Moses didn't tell him when they were coming back. But it's also kind of creating this really interesting space, which the rabbis love to do. You know, what is the space in which this catastrophe came from? It came from this really nebulous space of Moses saying, hey, I'm going to come back at 6 p.m. or I'm going to come back one day. They thought he meant 3 p.m. And really, so the mistake was very small, right? It was a very narrow area of misunderstanding. And it was a little place of misunderstanding which caused all of this, right? That's a really interesting way to look at this, right? It was a narrow mistake. And maybe there was the mistake was narrow, right? They thought Moses thought he told them, or it was obvious to them, I'm going to come down, don't worry, right? And then the rabbis are thinking, what did Moses tell them? You know, did Moses say, I'm going up there, and that's all he said? Or did he not say anything? Or did he say, I'll be back, behave yourselves? And what did they understand? And at what point did they start to really get, what were they worried about? Were they worried Moses is dead? Were they worried Moses is just kind of phased into a different dimension and is no longer on earth, you know, and kind of completely out with God? Or the Moses, what exactly is the worry? The rabbis in their way are trying to say, okay, the worry, it was a misunderstanding. And I think it is obviously, you know, funny, it's rabbinic mishigas trying to make everything concrete, but it's pointing to something that, you know, trying to get, okay, what exactly is the issue here? What did Moses say or not say? What did the people think? Why were they worried? What happened? And how does it help us understand the rest of the story? Which is that this is all a terrible mistake, really. That's what it's setting it up as. This is all a terrible mistake that should not have happened. The people did not really want to build a God and get angry at Moses, but they just were worried. They were scared. They thought, okay, if Moses went against his word, he never did.
Well, but Moses is a transitional object. He actually exists between the people and the divinity. And Moses is a concrete object. So when Moses is there, the people can somehow, at that point in their development, still trust that the divinity is looking after them. Once Moses leaves, it leaves a huge gap, which is replaced, I think, by the golden calf. You know, people have to have something concrete. And that's sort of the story of all religions, unfortunately.
Everybody has to have a leader.
They have to have a leader that's a transitional object. They have to have a king. Moses is gone. The golden calf is a fine replacement for Moses.
Beautiful. Yeah. And let's continue reading. That's exactly where Rashi is going to go with his third comment on this one. Who is reading?
I was reading. Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, please go
What
ahead.
am I reading now? Am I reading Rashi? Am I reading
Yeah,
Rambam?
Rashi, make us gods, and then in
Okay.
the next comments. Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
Rashi, break off the golden pendants which are in the ears of your wives. Aaron said to himself, women and children have a love for their ornaments. Perhaps
No,
the matter,
actually, sorry. Wait.
which one? A molten calf? As soon
Make
as
us
he had,
gods which shall go before us. Are you on my sheet or are you on your own?
yes, I'm
Rashi?
on your sheet.
Okay.
Hold on, where am I?
Oh, the top of that page, top of page 2. Make us gods which shall go before us.
Got it. They wish to have many gods. The words Elohim is to be taken as plural since the verb, I can't read that,
Yalchu, yeah.
is plural, confer the Sanhedrin.
And then just read the next one too, please. Yeah.
That man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, that man, which is parenthetical, okay, and who used to show us the way we had to go. Now that he is dead, we need gods, plural, which shall go before us.
Right. This is what David was saying. They needed an intermediary for spiritual reasons and even just for a leadership perspective. They felt lost without. Please continue reading. Orachaim.
Orachaim, who shall walk before us? The words
Before us. Yeah.
was chosen very carefully. They reasoned as follows. Seeing that God himself, who has taken us out of Egypt, is invisible and dwells in the celestial regions, they were afraid that if they would encounter some evil force in the desert without some visible symbol, which reassured them that God did indeed watch over them, they might lose faith. Oh, the tabernacle wasn't enough. They wished to construct some symbol of a celestial force which would remind them of God in heaven. The people who initiated the golden calf did not deny for a single moment either the primacy of God or the fact that he had made heaven and earth. They merely wanted a go-between them and God. So the tabernacle was not enough. It was not enough of a symbol of that. Okay.
Let's skip to page 3 and Ramban Nachmanides. He has just a little comment where he quotes Ibn Ezra. I couldn't find that one directly, but go ahead, Ramban, if you don't mind.
Okay, I'm trying to find it because I've got
Middle
it.
of page 3. Middle of page 3.
Okay, how does it begin?
Rabbi Abraham Ibn Ezra wrote the
Oh,
Elohim.
wrote that Elohim in this case, arise and make us Elohim, means that Aaron should make them something visible and corporeal on which the glory would rest. That's what Phil was saying earlier.
And then let's go to Rashi, a molten calf.
Okay. As soon as Aaron had thrown the gold into the fire in a melting pot, the magicians amongst the mixed multitude who would come up with them from Egypt came and made it the golden calf by their magic art. There are some who say that Micah, the idolater mentioned in Judges chapter 17, was there, who had been drawn forth from the foundations of the building in Egypt where he was nearly crushed.
Midrash.
He had in his possession a, quote, supernatural name, shame, and a plate upon which Moses had written, come up, ox, in order to raise the coffin of Joseph, who is compared to an ox, Deuteronomy 33:17, out of the Nile. And he cast it, the plate, into the melting pot, and the calf, the young ox, came out. Midrash Anhuma.
This is where Rashi, who sometimes is said to give the most simple interpretation, is not exactly always the most simple interpretation. But he is playing with this what we were talking about before. There's a sense of something supernatural, right? This is what Aaron at least says, to Moses, whether it's an excuse or poof, out of the fire came the golden calves, the wife. And this is what Octavia was saying too, that it's the mixed multitudes amongst them. Let's go to 4, to Chizkuni. Nancy, please go ahead. Read Chizkuni on page 4.
These are your gods?
They said, these are your gods, yeah.
Okay. They said, these are your gods, O Israel. Is it conceivable that these fellow travelers were so foolish as to credit a newly cast golden calf as having orchestrated the exodus which had occurred 3 months before that calf had been cast in gold? The sorcerers among the mixed multitude were able to create the illusion that some deity is speaking from their mouth. They now created the illusion that this calf had addressed them from its mouth, and that it was far superior to any Egyptian deity, as it was made of pure gold, so that what came forth from such a mouth must be sacred. The fact that they did not say, these are our gods who have taken us out of Egypt, is evidence that the Israelites had never become guilty of worshiping the calf with words such as these. Nonetheless, the whole people at this point were being tested by God as to their sincere belief in a God who is and remains unseen and devoid of tangible dimension.
So I think, let's see if if you could go to the next page, Tur Ha'aroch.
Okay, Tur Ha'aroch. Can't read the Hebrew, but I'll continue in the English. Were the Israelites all idiots that they would accept such a statement?
These are your gods. Yeah, we took you out of Egypt. Yeah, go ahead.
That they would accept such a statement? Had they not all experienced the miracles performed by the God of Israel only less than 3 months ago? The declaration is to be understood as based on the premise subscribed to by most idolaters, that while it is true there is a God in heaven who had created the universe, the teraphim were held to possess divine powers, exercising same just as did the prophets who performed miracles. The former, meaning the teraphim, were agents of spiritually negative forces, known in our parlance as
the spirits of impurity. But I'm going to stop it here, because he goes into a whole other. They're all trying to lessen the sin of the Israelites, which is what most of the, really 80% of the commentators are try to do that. They say, well, it was. The ox wasn't really, they didn't consider it to be God, or this happened. It was all a mistake. The one comment which is not on here, but I want to end with, is from Yehuda Halevi, the philosopher who wrote the Kuzari. He wrote, obviously the golden calf was a horrible sin, but he said what we've been saying. He said, look, people in those days were used to having idols or images. Uses the idea of an image. They were used to having an image for their God, and that's just what they were used to. And the people, the image made sense to them, and maybe they even thought God was somehow connected to it, or they weren't thinking, right? I mentioned this a million, but. This is a horrible sin. We remember it for all times, and yet there's also a place where God forgave them, and God didn't forgive all the sins. God did not forgive the spies when they failed to enter the land, and there's other places where God is even more harsh. So this sin of where they fell into their lowest nature, on some level, is forgiven by God. And that's something that's, and all the commentaries are to some degree responding to the fact that they're forgiven, and trying to understand, and don't want to read the worst into it, that they were just intentionally complete idolaters. And I think we to some degree, we all live as humanity in that space where we've all made mistakes, We all sometimes give in to parts of ourselves that we wish we hadn't. And this is why it's linked very much to what happened also, in the Garden of Eden. You may do anything you want except eat this one fruit. What happened? They ate the one fruit. And that as human beings, we have within us the ability to do good, the ability to do not so good. And where we all live in the tension of where the Israelites are. And sometimes the mistake happens just from that little misunderstanding. I wish I'd come, I thought you were coming in 2 hours, but you instead you came in 6 hours, and so the realm of human mistake is really, and where we get drawn sometimes. And God does forgive. And I think that's a place where we can remember out of this story that God forgives. He doesn't forgive those 3,000 people, apparently. We still live trying to understand why that happened and where that happened from. But there's a lot of, perhaps a final element to bring is there are a lot of forces in our world in all kinds of ways to make up what's happening. And we do our best to keep focused on the good part and do our best not to allow all the parts of us to get drawn into the golden calf, to draw us as individuals or as a society or as a Jewish people. We always try and keep as best we can. And when we do emerge from the derech, from the path, we try and pray for forgiveness and hope we have a Moses on our side to make the case to God. See you next week.